Починаємо наш наступний прес-брифінг і про результати роботи Києва.
We're starting our next press briefing about the new rules of game at the session of Kyivrada. Oleg Reznikov, Secretary of the Kyiv City Council. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. I would like to report that tomorrow there will be the next session which will take place at the same address. We are still in the premises of the Kyiv Regional Council where the Central Election Commission is located. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that why we call this briefing the new rules of game, because tomorrow we will be considering a very important document which is called Regulations of the Kyiv City Council, because any city council is to operate according to the regulations. That's the main document which regulates procedures of decision making, the interaction between members of the council, the rights of the factions, of the groups of members of council, the rights of the chairperson, and so on. The regulations passed by the previous convocation of Kyiv City Council is normal, but nothing is ideal in the world, and it's clear that there was a need to introduce some novelties which will improve the operations of Kyiv City Council. And the law also requires that any municipal council passes its own regulations and operate according to that. So basically, you can work according to the old regulations for 2 sessions. Now the second session is almost expires, and tomorrow we'll be presenting a new draft regulations. We were taking the proposals and the advice from the members of council, from the public, from the civil society. What could be of interest for you? First of all, we are talking about these new regulations, which will introduce some new things which were missing in the previous regulations. Probably the local councils do not have them either. Very often I was asked as a lawyer, is there any political responsibility? Do we have political responsibility of any politicians who promise to people, to voters, many things? They promise all these great things, but they never do what they promise. And there's practically no political responsibility because it's not in the legislation. There are examples of political responsibility when such politician will not be elected by voters. But again, very often politicians go to the parliament or to councils under some other flags. So we introduced the norm which will make it mandatory for the member of parliament to basically include into the election campaign the things which will be registered, and then the activities of such member of the council should correspond to the promises that were given in the election program. Then there's another important thing which is combating corruption. The corruption has different faces, and there should be different methods and approaches to combating this disease. It's impossible to cure everything immediately, but gradually we can cope with that. One of the things was that when being elected to the municipal council, the representatives of business associations, of industrial associations, they in fact were elected there to lobby their own interests or the interests of certain people who were financing their election campaigns. The members of the Kyiv City Council do not receive salaries because that is not their permanent job. They work elsewhere and they exercise the functions of the members of the council free of charge. So to develop the legislation which reduces the volumes of corruption activities, in the new regulations we introduce the new norm which according to which the member of the council who is interested in a certain resolution to be passed, he has to state at the meeting that there is such an interest, and in the written form has to inform either the chairperson or the secretary of the municipal council, inform that, and the chairperson will inform that there is the member of parliament who's interested in passing certain decision. And then, well, just imagine the developer is co-owner of the company which is constructing something, and such developer gets an agreement for allocating some plot of land. That's clear that such a member would be interested in passing this decision. So to avoid the conflict of interest, he now has to inform about that, about his interest, and abstain from voting. Violation of this norm, and first of all, there will be a sectoral commission on the ethical behavior of the members of the council. The commission will consider this case, and then the law enforcement bodies will be able to use legislation to prevent any corrupt activities. Now we create many provisional control and inspection commissions which basically do not do anything. They set up the commission, but nothing changes. So the new regulations will have the provisions on the composition of such a commission and on what the commission should be doing. Also, there will be a new mechanism of reporting of the members of city council, irrespective of whether they were members of the parliament, of the groups or factions or parties, or whether they are from majoritarian constituencies, that they will, first of all, inform about where they will be reporting about their activities, and such a report will be placed on the website of Kyiv City Council and in the newspaper Krishchatik. So this way we will be able to ask the MP whether he fulfills all the promises. Very often there is an opportunity which is never used, and that's proposing the draft resolutions which are submitted by the General Assembly of the citizens. Few people know that there is such a mechanism, and in the regulations we simplified the mechanism of considering such drafts, so when such decisions are passed at the general meetings, such decisions can really become the decisions of the Kyiv City Council. And Kyiv City Council also operates not in the process of plenary sessions, but the main work is via participation in the work of the commission, sectoral commissions, and very often There are good draft decisions which are lost or which are not considered by such commissions because the commission wouldn't have a quorum. The members of the council do not attend these meetings. So now the new regulations will have a clear mechanism of consideration. There will be a time frame, 14 days, if this is nothing complicated like a budget, and if such a draft decision is not considered within this period of time, then such a draft decision will be considered to be approved.
Including, I think it will be interesting for the public. Very often people want to deliver a speech from the rostrum of the Kyiv City Council. This causes a conflict because we have our set agenda and we invite people on urgent topics, and we cannot satisfy all the requests because there are physical limitations to the audience, to the hall, of course. So we will plan for every 3 months to hold the deputy councillors' hearings on the issues that are of public interest. The idea is that councillors' hearings is like a plenary session, which will not have an aim of adopting a number of decisions, but this will be hearings where representatives of the public and mass media will speak, and of course this will be broadcast by the Kyiv City television company, and mass media will have access. So these are the new rules that we will introduce tomorrow for consideration of Kyiv City councillors. And another interesting aspect of the new rules, these are the issue of the budget. The budgetary process is complicated. Very often it is hidden from the people, from the public. So as of tomorrow, we declare the new procedure of consideration of the city budget. It will be presented in detail by Mr. Reznikov, who is head of the Budget Commission, but the essence is that the budgetary process becomes public. There will be a way how the public can participate via our site. We understand and remember very well that the city budget depends directly on the state budget. It's understood that we cannot vote and adopt the budget before we have the rules of the game with the government and the state. But what is budget resolution in the world? For instance, in the United Kingdom, and even our parliament talks about budget resolution. Something like budget resolution will be presented. The budget forecasts will be known to the public beforehand, and we very much hope that the work is starting already, and the expectations for the budget will be understood before December. There's also a principled decision that the budget will be real, not inflated, which will have to be changed all the time. For instance, the colleagues from the previous convocation voted for the budget to the tune of almost 20 billion, but at the moment the general fund is 17 billion and the special fund is 6.5 million. So you know that this is at least 4 billion more. We will depend very much on what the new parliament will vote for, which I hope will be elected very soon, because you understand that there are budgetary subtractions from Kyiv budget, and the project of the budgetary code says that Kyiv will lose 80% from our taxes. We still await 1.8 billion hryvnia that were promised to us by the central government, and we still don't have it. I think that you all know about the problems of hot water in Kyiv, so I tell you that in practically all the districts that are being supplied not by Station 6 but by other stations, there is hot water already, because there's an opportunity to heat this water by oil and not by gas. Now, Station 6 that supplies hot water to Troyeshina, Raidužne, Obolon, it is nourished by gas, and as of today, all the attempts by the mayor and his first deputy and other officials responsible for this, all our addresses to the Cabinet of Ministers do not bring positive result. There is a direct order from Transgaz not to supply gas to Station 6. And the question is why? Why this is done by the government? We cannot find an explanation. Maybe this is connected to the maybe this is within the election campaign, but somehow Station 6 does not get gas. Besides, we want to consider several issues about the existing budget changes. This is connected to the children's program and the financing of some other programs. And although I regret to say about this, but we have undeclared war in the east, and Kyiv residents take part in the anti-terrorist operation. Although we understand that this is war, so one of the draft decisions is connected. And this is one of the first issues in the agenda, the changes to the budget that will provide for the financing of families of those Kyiv residents who take part in the anti-terrorist operation. Of course, there are land issues, because at the moment the Kyiv City Council has about 2,000 land cases of different nature, and even if we adopt 100 decisions per session, this will provide us with work for a year. We will consider 60 such cases this time, because one of the sources of revenue for the city budget is getting money for the sale or rent of the land, and also the agreement to develop some documentation. This is about the citizens who for 6 to 8 years tried to become owners of the land that is adjacent to their buildings, and some enterprises as well. But according to our data, 17% of the land within the boundaries of Kyiv, only 17% of this land is documented as it should, and the rest of the land is not provided for in any documents. So many enterprises and people do not pay for the land that they use, and this is a very important source of the revenue for the city budget. So this is what we will consider tomorrow at the plenary session. It is understood that we expect some activity from councillors who are running for the parliament. It won't become a news for us if the Kyiv rostrum will be used for their own PR in a nationwide scale, so that they get elected to the parliament. We are determined to move within the agenda, and I think that we will manage to do this. Thank you, Mr. Alexei, for this elaborate information of the new rules. Alexei Yurievich, tell us.
The question is, many MPs go to the parliament, including Vitaly Klitschko, who's running for the parliament. What's your attitude to that? Talking about responsibility of the members of council and why the agenda is set up in such a way that the issue about land could be considered after 8 o'clock in the evening. Answering your first question, my answer is very simple. Vitaly Klitschko, as the leader of the national party Udar and being the political partner, you remember that was stated during the presidential election campaign. Now he is the national leader of the political force. He has the list, and as the leader, he leads the members of his party to the parliament. But his obligations to the city of Kyiv, as the head of the Kyiv, he will not violate it. As to agenda, there is a general procedure. There are some general issues and then special. The land issues are considered to be special issues, and usually we have very difficult constructive debates with the participation of the members of the council and mass media. So usually the land issues do not cause a lot of discussion. Those that do cause, they are discussed. But there's a general procedure. First, we consider general issues, but 8 o'clock, it's just about the discipline of the members of council. Now, when we are in the regime of election campaign, the members of council use it as a platform for promoting themselves. For them, it does not matter what they say. It's important that they just say something. That is why they use their time, they talk, and this way we waste a lot of time. There were cases when just before lunch we would manage only to approve our agenda, because some people believed that they needed to have a lot of attention of mass media. But we will see the results after the 26th of October, whether such self-promotion was efficient. Responsibility of not Vitaly Klitschko, but the responsibility of those members of the council who are running the election. Should they be responsible to their voters, to Kyivites, if the voters, Kyivites, will support them in their new march, because the person makes a decision to grow, to become the member of the parliament. If Kyiv supports that, this will be the answer, whether such person has political responsibility. Those who were in the lists, that's clear that Kyivites were electing personally some people, but also understanding that these people are part of some political force. That means that the political force takes responsibility, and then the next person from the list goes into the Kyiv Council. There will be no risk as to the members of the council who were elected by the list system. But those who come from majoritarian constituencies, that's a different story. There will be an issue whether we will need to have some additional elections. So the city council may lose about 5 members, but this will not influence our quorum. The working, our council has 120 members. There's no legal responsibility, of course. There might be only political responsibility. Those voters who will vote for this majoritarian candidate For example, they liked how he worked in the city council, and they want to see this person in the parliament. Ukrainian news. As to additional elections, on which conditions they may take place, there are two conditions. First of all, if the member who is elected to the parliament will be dismissed as the member of the Kyiv Council, so he is deprived of his status. After that, the Verkhovna Rada has to appoint additional elections in this constituency. And the Central Election Commission, will have to settle the issue when such elections, additional elections, are to be held. Will there be more land issues in the agenda? Which session of Kyiv Council? I could not understand. In Facebook, Volodymyr Prokopiev, the head of Land Commission, said that there's a new procedure of land allocation. Will there be more land issues at the sessions of Kyiv Council? Wonderful question. Mr. Prokopiev wrote about that. I'm one of the participants of the discussion around that provision. The provision hasn't been passed yet. That's a draft which we discuss in the Kyiv City Council. There's a working group set up. There are discussions going on with the representatives of the Department on Land Resources, with members of the Commission, and this procedure will be submitted for approval to Kyiv City Council, and only after that it will become a regulation. The idea of this procedure is to reduce the number of procedures which are extra, which were invented to earn some additional money, to get some additional bribes, gratitudes, plus bureaucratic procedures, and the law allows to do it simpler and faster. So we would like to reduce this time twice. Plus the issue of providing approval for developing technical documentation, we believe it should not be voted by the session. The session should vote on allocating the land on either sale or lease of land, but to give approval for development of technical documentation, that's clear that the person, when he receives such an approval, comes with this approval, but then the person basically may get a refusal when it comes to allocation of land. So that is why we will be providing approval for technical documentation development after the issue of land allocation is settled. Basically, the sectoral commission will take a decision first, and then the city council will be taking final decision. So number of issues which will be reduced. There is a section of providing approval for development of technical documentation. We will not have that, and this way we will be able to speed up consideration of other issues. So I believe that the number of land issues will be the same, but this will make it easier for people to get approvals. The rating of Kyiv is reduced, and restructuring of debt did not affect our rating. Our objective was not to influence the rating, because we understand that there are different factors and criteria of identifying the rating. It was important for us not to get to pre-default situation, because we need to pay some foreign currency debts, and if we were unable to repay certain debts, then we would get into pre-default we will get a pre-default status. So I believe that our decisions ensured us the chance not to be in default, but that rating influences the decision on providing new loans to us. We have to better report on existing borrowings. We do not need to pay them back before the term. I have a traditional question about the small architectural forms. I was waiting for this question. I know it's hurting. It's the third one talking about the rating of expectations from Kyivites. We've met again, and we've met with you. There is revolutionary and evolutionary process. About 20,000 small architectural forms are in Kyiv, and they are supported by some associations who hire 200, 300 combatants that protect them, and the militia and prosecutors officials very often protect them. But we were talking about evolutionary approach and military approach. The MAFs, which are in 20-meter zone near the underground stations, now we have reports that about 400 of such MAFs were removed from this 20-meter zone around underground stations. We require to have a yellow line around the underground station, 20 meters away from the exit from the underground station. And we also passed a new provision which is about getting payment for putting such small architectural forms, and there's a procedure. From the 1st of January, there will be 7,000 of them, not 20,000. Some owners of MAFs will have certain holidays so that they pay to the city budget, and then they have holiday, but that's in case if they are not violating all the rules. So we still have the war ahead of us. We're removing these MAFs. They take them away, but then a couple of days later they put new MAFs, and the groups of combatants help in that. I myself participated in these activities. We will suggest some creative approaches in combating illegal mafiosi. And we are developing such an approach so that we involve people who are ready to help the authorities. Basically, the city elected their citizens who have to support the life and activity of the municipality. So we will request our neighbors for assistance, basically. Once there are no more questions, I would like to thank Mr. Reznikov, and I hope that the new rules that you've mentioned will be effective soon. And using this opportunity, because today is the 8th of October, the Day of Lawyer. That's the Day of Law. I would like to congratulate all the lawyers who are here outside. I would like to congratulate you all. I wish you all the best, because your brains are needed for Ukraine. And from Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, we also would like to congratulate you. Our next press briefing will be held at 3 o'clock.